It's a final word, World Cup Daily, Day 4, India hosting Australia. We make this for Westfield, London and Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. I'm Adam Collins in London. Jeff Lemon, ooh la la in Chennai. Tell us about it in 30 seconds.
Australia didn't start well. Mitchell Marsh out for a duck. David Warner made 40-odd. They were 2 for 110 when Smith and Labuschagne were together, grinding away. And then the spinners came to the fore. Kuldeep, Jadeja, Ashwin, 6 between them. Bowled out Australia for 199 in the last over. And then India lost 3 before they scored a run off the bat. But then Virat Kohli got together with KL Rahul and pretty much iced it. Got most of the way there. He was out towards the end. KL Rahul almost made 100 and didn't quite, and they ran it down comfortably with a bit of Hardik Pandya, bang bang towards the very back end. How's that?
Yeah, good enough, good as gold. 6-wicket victors, they get there in the 42nd over, which was kind of what I was angling for at one point. I'm like, speed up fellas, do some net run rate damage to Australia, and so they did at the very, very end. KL Rahul ending it with a 6. He said himself on the interview when he was named player of the match, he was trying to hit a 4 and then hit a 6 to bring up his 100, and fair enough, it was a mighty performance. He went down on his haunches, almost low-key upset that he cleared extra cover for 6 off Pat Cummins, which is not an easy thing to do. He deserved a century. It was such a beautiful innings. It was chanceless. It was worth a century. It was a 165 run stand with Kohli after they came together. 3 wickets in the first 2 overs, chasing 200. It looked like it was going to be one of those days where everything goes wrong with 3 ducks, 1 for Rohit, 1 for Shreyas Iyer, and 1 for Ishan Kishan. Hazelwood, a double wicket maiden to get going. Stark, a wicket in his first over as well. But you don't want anyone else but Kohli in that situation. And what a luxury for India, having KL Rahul injured for much of this year with the torn thigh he picked up during the IPL, being able to slot in at number 5. And on his day, he's the most, or close to, the most attractive player in the world. And he showed all of that today. Poise as well.
Oh, he was remarkable, and considering that he's had this kind of in and out of the team thing, and I've just got someone trying to run over my tripod here, which is interesting. There's always a little bit of colour and movement when things. I know we've got away with it. That's an excellent clearance from the local driver. Knows the conditions, knew the conditions well, a bit like KL Rahul did. We didn't mention also that Kohli was dropped when he was on 12, and how pivotal that might have been. Played a hook shot against Josh Hazlewood, top edge looped up, and it was one of those ones. You had Marsh at mid-wicket and you had Carey running in. Carey bailed out because he saw Marsh coming at him like a locomotive, and why wouldn't you bail out if Mitchell Marsh was running at you at top speed? Marsh actually got there, slid in, but because he was on the move, the ball didn't even hit the heels of his hands. I think it just hit him on the chest and bounced off as he was sliding across the ground. Carey might have got there if Marsh hadn't been thundering at him, but probably not. Looking at it on replay. So had they caught Kohli at that point, India would have been, 4 for 20, 4 for 15? And who knows? But I just kind of felt even at that point, even if Kohli had got out, they still should have chased it down because it was only 200. It was 4 and over. And, Australia were well short of what they needed to be. And you can put all of that down to spin. It felt weird. It felt weird to me that Australia came to Chennai, which was always going to be the most turning surface that they were likely to play on, the slowest one, the one that's always a bit rough and a bit ripped up. And they went in and went, Stark, Cummins, Hazlewood, let's treat it like it's a test match in Brisbane. And just something about it just didn't sit right in terms of actually planning and actually being realistic about what you could do in that particular fixture.
Yeah, at different points you could choose your own adventure on that. When they've got them 3 for spit, because remember, Hazelwood would be the man who misses in that scenario, and he bowls that gorgeous nip backer to get Rohit, and prompts a false stroke on a tacky surface from Shreyas, who places it straight to Warner at cover, and Ishan Kishan to his first ball has a go at the Stark tempter well outside the off stump, which I suppose can happen with the field up. First 10, you're throwing your hands at those types of deliveries, the Stark swing with the new ball. But 2 things. First of all, the catch that wasn't, you can call it a drop catch from Mitchell Marsh, which of course it is. Maybe Carey should have pulled out as well, and I acknowledge that Carey got in his line of sight, didn't actually hit his hand, hit him on the chest. But also, I do think it's Carey's catch. My view is that Carey is getting to that, and if you're I don't know how I'm saying this after one game, but maybe it's to do with it's some subliminal level. The fact that Carey may not feel as solid in this side as he should. He's not been making runs with the exception of the 100 in South Africa a few weeks ago, which sounds
almost 100.
A bit cute, doesn't it? With the exception of the 100, he hasn't done much, but it's true to say that his batting
returns...
Except
the 99 not out. Well, the other, 10 innings either side of that, he hasn't made more than 14. So he's had a lot of low scores in between that one good innings.
That's what I'm saying. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's the wicketkeeper's domain when the ball lands at leg gully.
And when the
I
ball's
feel
in
like
front of him, he's going towards the ball, and Mitch Marsh is sort of tracking back.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, even if you've got more ground to make up, if you're coming towards it, you're more likely to, you're the player who should be, but also maybe Mitch Marsh should be bailing out. I think the thing was that it wasn't a huge skyer. It didn't go like 20 metres up. It only went half that distance, and so they didn't have quite as much time to work out who should go, who shouldn't, that sort of thing. It was more just instinctive. Marsh just went with it as soon as he saw it go up. But look, could have been critical. Who knows? It might not have made a difference. They might have just chased the total down with somebody else making the runs.
Yeah, they might have, but I do think it's the turning point. Look, they would have been 20 for 4, and Kohli to that point was the only one hitting it off the square. Rahul had barely faced a ball at that juncture, and look, Rahul batted so well, and we've touched on that already, but 20 for 4, it feels very different with Hardik Pandya playing the way he does. Absence of the counterfactual, we'll never know, but it feels to me like the game for Australia, that was their moment, because the way that Kohli chases, the record chasing, Jeff, I know you keep that in a spreadsheet, all the things Kohli's done over the years when batting second in one-day internationals, that if he gets set, he loves, he relishes, he craves situations where it's back against the wall and it needs to be on him, and that's exactly what he got today. So Australia fluffed their lines on that front. On selection, remember, they didn't have a second spinner to turn to. Ashwin Agar's back in Perth. They weren't willing to take the risk on Agar inside the 15. They instead hedged and went with Head. And look, and by that I mean they chose to have one injured player to bring back later in the competition with Travis Head. They weren't willing to carry two of them. So Agar wouldn't have been available anyway. But really, what's happened here is Marnus Labuschagne has got that last spot. And they thought, not unreasonably, that Maxwell could do a job as the second spinner. Cam and I have already been talking on the pod in the last couple of weeks about what does a second spinner mean in this tournament. We saw Glenn Phillips on day one take a couple of crucial wickets. I thought Maxwell bowled really, really well and tidily, gave nothing away. It was more Zampa who struggled. There was a graphic on television that showed of all the spinners on show today that it was Zampa who was hitting the stumps least, and we know that Zampa's comparative advantage normally, that despite being a wrist spinner, he somehow keeps those three stumps in play to right-handers all the time. Didn't start well, bowling with the wet ball, which, again, if we're going to be talking about bowling in the due second throughout the 7 weeks, I'm certain. So, and he's quite late. I reckon, with Zampa, you want to get him into the contest earlier. They bowled a lot of overs before they bowl a guy who in all probability was going to have to take a stack of wickets if there were any chance. And by that stage, Kohli and Rahul were pretty much set.
Yeah, I think if you look at that innings, you think, well, Zampa needs to take 3 for minimum if you're going to win that game. And so it was a bit odd that they went to Green first and Maxwell bowled before Zampa did and so on. And the partnership became more established. Conditions are tough. It's 11:15 here. I'm standing outside and I'm sweating my absolute proverbials off. Like, it is hot. I'm just standing still talking to you and I'm physically struggling to do it. Zampa, he had the towel down on the boundary. He pretty much could have had a bathrobe from one of the hotels or something. He was just drying himself off after every over. He was drying the ball constantly. Like, it was difficult to bowl leg spin out there, and he just dragged down, bowled short, got hit for 3 boundaries in his first over, and it felt like that was pretty much the end of it, right? If like at that point, he would have needed to do something really dramatic in order to come back. But just in terms of how Australia put their squad together, I know it's one of those things where when the batting doesn't make enough runs, we all talk about the bowling, but it just, to me, it represented a team that hadn't thought this through to say, let's come to Chennai and bowl all our quicks. But also when you're looking at the squad, like you say, there's no second spinner. Okay, fine. Australia's first game is in Chennai. The next two are in Lucknow, where, not long ago the curator got sacked because the pitch was turning absolutely square. So, and they've relayed it and whatever, but it's still probably going to be spin friendly at Lucknow for their next 2 fixtures. So if you're Australia, sure, this is maybe taking the piss a little bit, but you could pick a second spinner, pick a Matt Kuhneman or whoever it might be, for those first 3 or 4 games, and then they could conveniently pick up an injury at such time as you want Travis Head to come back into the squad. Travis Head's your third spin option. He's your second sort of not exactly full-time option behind Maxwell and Zampa, so he's significant there. He would have bowled if he'd been playing tonight. So that's the way that I would have tried to play it if I were putting that squad together, was to at least make use of that 15th spot while it's available. And look, anybody can pick up a little quad strain or a little calf or, something that's just a minor bit of discomfort that rules them out of the rest of the series. It's unfortunate, but who are we to judge? And then you can send them home and swap in whoever you want from that point on.
Well, the real test of that will be if England want to call upon Jofra Archer later in the comp. So that's not actually, because remember, the technical committee need to tick off on that. It's a little bit like when you have a concussion substitute, the match referee needs to get the official word from the medical staff. So, there is an extra layer of probity there, if you like. So,
but if the medical staff say they have an injury, and it's their job to say that someone has an injury, then what are you going to do? You're going to go in and do the scans yourself, and David Boone's going to say, it doesn't look like a calf strain to me, and then overrule you. Like, all you need to do is put the thermometer up against the light bulb. Just go and watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You'll figure out how to do it. There's a way to get out of the squad if you need someone to get out of the squad. You don't actually have to kick them down a flight of stairs. All I'm saying is there are options, and I will not be entirely surprised if one of the England fast bowlers picks up one of those sort of injuries should Jofra Archer become fit and ready to go later in the tournament.
Speaking of quicks, Jasprit Bumrah, welcome back to the big time. 2 for 35 from 10. Only conceded 2 boundaries. One of them was a 6 in his final over, which I thought was stiff for him. I was hoping he'd get through, only conceding just the 1-4 at the very start. All 6 bowlers took a wicket. The spinners were superb. How often Jadeja? The way he set Smith up was just immaculate. TV broke this down really well. The 2 balls trained towards leg stump, going on with the arm at about 95, 96, 97 kilometres an hour. Then dragging the pace back, ragging it some more past the outside edge, clipping the top of off. That's superb bowling from Jadeja, more than batsman error from Smith, who was on 46 at the time. Warner caught and bowled from Kuldeep, the ball after missing a sweep shot, so under pressure from him. Maxwell beaten by Kuldeep going back. How often does Kuldeep Yadav get batsmen going back when they shouldn't? And Maxwell fell as a consequence of that. Not the right time for Maxwell to be. That was a bad fit for him, right? They're not constructing their plan A with Maxwell walking in at 119 for 4 or whatever it was. It might have been 110 for 3, when he walks in.
He came in at 5, didn't he? And Green came in at 6.
He did. But the point is the run rate was at like 3.9 and the pitch was turning and the spinners have plenty of overs. They're hoping Maxwell's coming in later with a more sturdy foundation laid so he can play his way from the outset, but that wasn't possible today due to the slowness of the batting. But that's mostly to do with the bowling, right? Ashwin, to think he wasn't even in their squad a couple of weeks ago, straight in the first 11, 1 for 34. Kuldeep Yadav, 2 for 42, including the huge wicket of David Warner, who looked pretty good, I thought, for his 6 boundaries out of 41, most of those in the power play. But then the squeeze is put on. They go 73 balls without a boundary. They only hit, I think, 1 boundary in the space of 15 overs across that stretch of time between overs 15 and 30. It was something like 4 for 48 in the 15 overs between 15 and 30, to continue to say 15 over and over again. But you know what I'm trying to say. So that's where India's spinners, 3 of them, were able to work in tandem, and Rohit used them well, chopping on, chopping off, getting Siraj on for a tidy over, bringing back Bumrah and saving him for the end, having Hardik Pandya to draw upon just for 3 overs, but 3 overs that brought him a wicket as well. So credit to Rohit Sharma for pulling the right rein at the right time and just smothering Australia, really.
And Kuldeep, I enjoyed particularly that little bit of extra time in the air that drew David Warner forward, just made him miss time it back to the bowler. And the one to Maxwell absolutely rags. That turned a long way. As it came in, it took his leg stump as he was going back to pull. Like you say, it wasn't quite short enough to pull. It's still coming on at a decent rate, but it has that amount of turn as well. And Maxwell just throwing his head back going, I can't believe I did that. But you're on a hiding to nothing, I think, at that point when you're already 5 for spit. Mitchell Starc, really important with the bat, made 28 towards the end. Smoked that boundary down the ground in the last over just to get them to 199, so at least you've got to chase 200 rather than a sub-200 score against us. That would have been sort of what the Australians were thinking when they went into the rooms, and I thought that was important. He's for a player who's so experienced, he finds ways to continue to grow in stature in terms of taking responsibility in difficult situations, and then picking up a wicket in his first over, as he's done so often in ODIs. It's just his calling card is the start things off with at least 1 and opening the door for Hazelwood to pick up a couple more. But Yeah, so I guess when I'm thinking about the fast bowler situation, it's like, okay, you can have that burst off the top, but they're probably likely to be pretty ineffective after 4 or 5 overs once that ball gets old. My God, I mean, they changed the ball 2 or 3 times while Australia were bowling. When India were bowling, that ball was so chewed up, it had all these brown splotches all over it. It looked like it had just been rolled through the mud. Like, what are you supposed to do with a ball like that after about 22 overs, unless you have a raft of quality spinners in your side?
Yeah, and that's using a new ball from either end as well. So the balls only need to get through 25 overs, and the game has changed as a consequence of that. But and just to go back to the Australian batting, so Green makes 8 from 20. He doesn't hit it off the square. Stoinis will be in that spot eventually, but he's still coming back from that hamstring niggle. I'm not sure how serious it is, Jeff. You're there on the ground. You might have got more intelligence that you've gathered today. But, I mean, it feels like they really needed Stoinis there.
Yeah.
And a boundary hitter when they were struggling to find the rope, and Green, for whatever reason, he just gets bogged down at the start of an innings. Like, once he's going, he's fine. If they're going to use Green and they're going to stick with him, it's probably in the top 3.
Yeah.
But there's no room in the in there.
Yeah,
exactly. And that all happens after Jadeja takes 2 in the over. The Labuschagne review, because he hoped he hadn't hit it, but everyone seemingly knew that he flogged it, and so the technology showed. And then Carey, who we touched on at the start of the show, not making any runs, a second ball duck, which just meant that from there, the 59 runs they got from 140 for 7 was a really good outcome for Australia to make it at least vaguely competitive. But they needed everything to go right in the fielding innings, and the drop catch was ending Mitch Marsh's horrible day. That was that.
That was that, and that's a first up loss for Australia. It might not be all that significant. We're kind of wargaming it, doing the numbers upstairs earlier, and basically if you want to be a semi-finalist, you can afford to lose to the other semi-finalists as long as you beat everybody else who you should beat. So there is that sort of, it's almost a free hit in a way against the other handful of top teams if you think you're one of the top teams. But as soon as you slip up and lose one of the games that you think you shouldn't, that's when you're in strife. So you do need to beat a couple of the really good sides in order to have that in your back pocket. So Australia may get away with it, they may not, but we're only one game into a long tournament, and oh God, going to get run over by a truck here as well. Everything's happening out here. I think this is a very good time for us to get to the Final Word Hall of Fame.
If you say so. This is the Final Word Hall of Fame, brought to you by Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. Kids Eat Free is back at Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City this half term. So if the action on the field has given you a hankering for some international cuisine, there's no better time to fill your turn. From family-friendly favourites like Bill's to the reimagined Indian street food of Bindas Eatery, there's more variety than Ravi Chandra and Ashwin's seemingly endless bag of tricks, and with dozens of places for the whole family to skate, bowl, golf, bat and more, there really is no better place for a half-term day out than Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City, Jeff. More extra, less ordinary. We've been there before. We've done that. We've had Indian at Westfield London, and we had a great time.
Copper chimney, I think it was. The only thing they don't have is someone to get run over by a truck. That's the only experience I've enjoyed here that I couldn't have enjoyed at Westfield, except maybe this game, which wasn't on. Could have watched it on TV there. Hall of Fame, what have we got? I particularly like the fact that when Kohli clipped a ball behind square for 2, it was at the end of the second, or I think it was the third over. Those were the first runs India had scored off the bat. They'd already lost 3 wickets at that point. There was a stage where the top 5 players on the scorecard all had naught next to their name when Kohli and KL Rahul were yet to score. And I think even at that point I thought they'll bounce back and win it. But it was, it was an interesting beginning.
Yeah, it's one of those that Andy Zaltzman would tell us that it's the only time there have been 5 zeros on the scoreboard or something like that in a one-day international. I've got one for Kohli as well. I loved his dive to remove Mitch Marsh. It was kind of after he caught the ball. It was like, performing for the judges if ice skating. It was beautiful. It was unnecessary, but it was glorious flair in the cordon from Kohli. Shane Watson on commentary. I mentioned the Labuschagne review, and he was critical of that, but he caveated it, Watson, by saying, now, I'm not really one to talk about reviews, which shows wonderful self-awareness from the big rig, who's been really good on TV commentary so far. One semi-serious point, and I don't want to get too into this because I can't be fucked dealing with the comments, but how does Javo have a visa into India when so many people don't? How is it possible that this guy is there at the moment? Could have disrupted the game again, didn't, having run on before. Kohli ran over to him and gave him a spray as well, which I enjoyed. But this serial menace who's been in the UK legal system, so it's not like he's not known to people. His surname and his first name should be available to the authorities. They could have put 2 and 2 together. How is it possible that he is now in the country at games of World Cup cricket when many people aren't.
Yeah.
And Ben Gardner made this good point on Twitter. That just feels fundamentally wrong. And hopefully they find a way of fucking locking this bloke in his hotel room for the rest of his stay.
Yeah, or pop him back in the cargo hold, hopefully, or just somewhere else. Just send him somewhere shit. Where did they put Napoleon? Send him out there. You can gate crash the arsenic-laced castle that Napoleon died in. Enjoy it. Enjoy all the attention. Massive knob. What else? What do we got? So you mentioned it off the top, but the fact that KL Rahul was... So they needed 5 to win, and he needed 7 for 100. Or was it 9 for 100? He needed 9 for 100, and he was like, okay, I'm just going to chip this over mid-off for 4, but the ball was coming on with such pace that he accidentally hit it for 6. Ever seen someone hit an accidental 6 before? And like you said, fell to his knees and then had a big smile on his face. He saw the funny side, but he wanted to hit a 4 and then hit a 6, but he accidentally bit off a little bit too early.
I saw a nice tweet from Josh Jonafinga, who worked with us during the Ashes. He was there with cricket.com.au, an excellent young journo. You'll like this, Jeff. With 200 needed to win, the required rate was exactly 4 and over, right? Logically.
Yep.
India were 80 after 20 overs.
Yep.
And then they were 120 after 30.
Yep.
That is just perfection.
Yeah.
Talk about staying on the rate. I mean, I, on Twitter, said that it was time to shelve talk of personal milestones at about, I might have said this, over 36, I might have said.
Yep.
Let's forget about personal milestones. India need to do some damage to Australia's net run rate. Because your point before is correct about as long as they beat each other, all's well in the end.
Yeah.
But if India take serious net run rate off Australia, then they might make it hard for Australia to make the final 4 if, say, it's like between Australia and South Africa for spot number 4.
Absolutely.
South Africa have had a great day yesterday. So, in fairness, both Hardik Pandya and ultimately KL Rahul finished it in a hurry. So I haven't checked their latest rating, but that'll be right up there. And that's going to mean that Australia, when they play teams like the Netherlands and Afghanistan, have to go that much harder. And sometimes you just can't catch up. We saw that in the T20 World Cup last year where they had a heavy loss against New Zealand, and they just couldn't catch up through the rest of the group stage. Yeah,
with the with the extra percentage there, that's worth a win and a half. That could be worth 6 points when we get to finals. There's that kind of take to it. My last bit for Hall of Fame was particularly when Kohli brings up his 50, right, and he waves his bat. I swear, I'm not even exaggerating here. Almost the entire crowd was wearing Virat shirts. There were a few Rohit shirts, there was a sprinkling of Dhoni shirts, and everyone else was wearing a Virat shirt. And, the blue Indian shirt with Virat on the back. And I don't think it's necessarily because every one of them is a Kohli fan, but if you want to buy an India shirt, it has Virat on the back. So there's not much option. But to see like 30,000 people in Virat shirts all applauding another guy in a Virat shirt who's like, no, I'm the actual one. But I don't know, it was this weird sort of kind of post-modern, strange moment, something to do with mirrors and the audience and reflecting yourself and breaking out into fractals, and that each one within us contains multitudes. There was something really bizarre about it. But then my favourite bit that topped it off was sitting in front of us amongst a whole stand, like probably 500 or 600 people, all wearing Virat shirts, every single one. There was one dude, local fella, Indian chap, wearing an Australian Test shirt with Smith on the back. Not even a one-day shirt. He had a Test shirt and he was like, yes, I like Steve Smith. Suck it. Respect to you, my friend. You keep going your own way, Fleetwood Mac. Beautiful.
Last thing from me was they made a big deal in the TV coverage beforehand about Jeff Marsh making 100 at Chennai to start the '87 World Cup, and when Finchy asked Mitch about it when doing his pre-game interview. It'd be great to make 100 and do what my old man did, getting a duck and then dropping the key catch. Mitch Marsh will be back. We know Marsh is a player of class. He's a man of integrity. He'll put this behind him very quickly. But it didn't quite go the same way. And Kohli missed the chance to make 100 for the third time in India's first game of a World Cup. Did so in 2011, did so in 2015. Wasn't able to quite get there today, finishing on 85, and he was fuming as well, just miscuing Hazelwood, who we've not even touched on Josh Hazelwood, but we will another time, I'm sure. Oh, and lastly, as we end the Hall of Fame, I mentioned it on the Afghanistan-Bangladesh podcast yesterday, Jeff, but I'm happy to report to you that she and Arnott from Westfield, they've had their first baby. Frederick Leonard, so 2 fast bowling links there, and Fred Spofforth and Lenny Pascoe. So congratulations to them. I hope and I'm sure his son will be more extra and less ordinary.
That's it from us. We'll leave it here from the Chepauk Stadium in Chennai and from Adam in London. This has been the Final Word Daily, day 4 of the World Cup. Thanks to Westfield. If you like what we're doing, patreon.com/thefinalword is where you can support the show. We'll see you tomorrow for day 5.